Hello, everybody, and welcome to this introduction overview session of the CPF program. It is the beginning, the kickoff for the September 2024 cohort. And as usual, I'm pretty excited to go into another round because, as usual, we are going to have quite a bit of new content, new lessons to be learned. And again, a few, I would say, pretty exciting and sometimes even intense weeks ahead. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Python Quant and your program director. Today's session is meant to give you a broader high-level overview and to provide you some orientation with regard to what to expect from the CPF program, and maybe a few hints here and there of how to best approach your own learning experience and to make the best out of it. I've prepared a slide deck and I want to get into this right now. Without further ado, let me show you the agenda. We have first a few words and graphics and numbers about a CPF program, then a little bit of background about myself for those who don't really know what I've been up for in the past. Then we discuss a little bit of Python in finance and which role it plays these days. Then I want to highlight two classes as examples for the other classes, right? So the content is, I would say, well too far-fetched, too broad, manifold here in this regard. To give you a detailed overview of everything that is there, right? I rather want to give you an idea of how to navigate the program and how to make the best out of it, right? Then I want to show you your number one resource, that's the Quant platform and what we have added recently, plus then the study plans, and we are going to discuss a few guiding principles for the program. I touch upon the quizzes and exercises that you can do, that you can expect in the program, the role of the user forum, as well as our Discord server, a few words about the final project, which is now at the beginning of the cohort, well too early to discuss or even think about. But I know from experience that many are interested in this final step, which is necessary and required in order to obtain the certificate itself, the CPF. And the final point here, the brochure, this is just meant to be a link to another document that might be helpful, right? So the CPF program, it is in and of itself a 16-week program. This is already quite ambitious. It sounds like a lot of time when you get started, but over the course you might notice that it's not that much time given the breadth and depth of the resources that we provide. So it's 350 hours of instruction that are already there. So without the live sessions that we are going to add to this set of recordings, right? We provide you also with PDF versions of my books. I'm just like at the very final stages of publishing and finishing at least, and then it will be published afterwards, my newest book about reinforcement learning for finance. You find also resources in this regard, obviously, in the program. More than 550 Jupyter notebooks and many thousand lines of ready-to-use Python code, right? So there's, in other words, a lot of resources that you can go through, but you don't have to. When we talk about 16 weeks, or even those who are rather targeting for some self-paced study in terms of maybe going over 6, 9, or 12 months, there is no requirement to go through all the resources, but at least you have access to them, and you can consider larger parts then as optional materials. But you need to focus on at least one core topic, either asset management, algo trading, or computational finance. Here is a more detailed overview with a few more numbers attached in terms of hours. So we have bootcamp, which is a concise way of maybe getting into Python for finance in general, a little bit about crypto, Linux basics. It's really helpful, I would say, to go through these modules and to get at least the basics of working on a command line in your Linux environment. acquired, right? Mathematics basics for those who want to review important mathematical concepts. The Python for Finance basics alone, 35 hours of modules, right? NLP is something that we added recently in a new form, in a much more detailed, updated form. PFF key skills you will find from the beginning on the study plan. Python and Excel, financial data science. This is all what we call the foundations on the left-hand side here of the slide, right? Then we have the applications, which are related to AI, right? We have this core topic of AI, but this goes through all the other core topics, right? For example, Python for asset management or algorithmic trading, where you find, of course, dedicated classes there as well, right? And yeah, a bit about financial packages, for example, which are useful in many different areas, right? The Python ecosystem has grown tremendously in this regard, but the core focus of our program is that you are supposed to learn most of the things, most of the topics from scratch, meaning, for example, there are, of course, a number of backtesting packages available for, let's say, algorithmic trading strategies, but we teach the backtesting from scratch, even when it gets to the event-based version of this so important approach, right? So finance with Python down here, also a fundamental, a core class, which everybody should study intensively and thoroughly. And related to this is the book Financial Theory with Python, where you also see the cover, I think, in the back of my head here. That's also a recent addition, which really is about important introductory topics in the three areas: finance, related mathematics, and the implementation in Python, right? Here, what delegates have said in the past. I'm not going to read this. This is for you as a reference if you're interested what others have thought of the program, right? And now a few words about myself. Not that much about me as a person, what I did in the past, but rather about my books in this context. Here you see on the left-hand side the book that I mentioned, Financial Theory with Python and Python for Finance, my 700 pages book. I've just had a book signing in London, returned on the weekend, where I signed like 20 books from O'Reilly. So you see them here, all of those with the animals, right? You might know that every O'Reilly book has its own animal and no duplicates in this regard, right? Python for algo trading, of course, a part in the algo trading area or subdomain of the program. AI and finance, important, I would say, for almost everything that we do. And the two Wiley books that is here, derivatives, analytics, and listed volatility and variance derivatives, these are important for computational finance and not that much for the other core topics here in the program. But nevertheless, important stuff if you want to work, let's say, as a quant. Traditionally, this was the domain of the quants: option pricing, hedging, options trading, risk management, etc. But today, I think it's a little bit broader, the spectrum, what quants are supposed to do in the industry, right? That's the newest book that I mentioned before, Reinforcement Learning for Finance. Yet another animal, as you can easily see here, right? This time it's a spider monkey, right? And yeah, I also, when I was talking about London, I was giving a workshop about reinforcement learning for finance, and we recently added a class based on the current version of the book, which has 20 modules or sessions. So also this so important area in AI for finance is growing steadily, we can say, right? So that's the book. And here you see a bit more text. Again, just for you as a reference, I'm not going through this, but for those who might be interested in it, yeah, you can read it and digest it if you like. So Python in finance, I started including this again. So when I started with Python for finance, and let's say I wanted to make a bit of business out of it, so beyond being a hobby for quite a while, many years back, right? This was basically what I was talking about, not all day long, but every so often, right? to explain why Python is good for finance, why people are using it, why other companies who are not using it might be better off when using it, etc. I think these discussions are not really necessary anymore. So Python has established itself as the platform, the language in finance. In particular these days, even more so, because Python is also a first-class citizen in the whole machine learning, deep learning, reinforcement learning, and AI domain in general, right? So this is yet another good reason to make use of Python. Probably Python is not the only language that a financial institution will use, but it's for sure one, and most of the times a major one, right? So what can you do with the Python skills that you acquire in our program? Data analysis and modeling. That's naturally so, because for everything else that you're going to do, it's always about data, right? And about crunching data, pre-processing data, processing data, post-processing data, visualizing data, etc. pp. Algorithmic trading, obviously a core topic. Financial engineering, this is the computational finance side where it is strong. Machine learning and AI, what I mentioned before, right? And we can say Python is really versatile and efficient, right? Of course, you can accomplish many things that we are going to cover also with, let's say, C or C# or C++ or Java or Julia maybe, right? Julia might be pretty close to Python, closer than the other ones that I mentioned. But there's no question that in terms of, yeah, I call it time to result, right? You get started with an idea and you have something that works, at least to a large extent. This time usually is pretty short as compared to other options that you have. And it is simply, as I was saying before, it is an industry standard, right? I don't need to argue anymore and give talks again in the sense of, oh, Python is a good candidate. You should consider this. These days are over. I remember them vividly, but I'm also happy that we now have achieved the state of Python being an industry standard. Of course, we have a huge community. When I was in London at the ODSC conference, obviously hundreds of people, and I would say at least 90% are doing something with Python. Maybe other technologies as well, but almost everybody knows their Python, right? So in quantitative roles now, beyond the topic, so what roles will help you, yeah, high level, not high level, advanced level Python skills, I'd rather say, yeah, these are the typical quant positions, quant researchers, quant developers, quant modelers, right? Quantitative analysts in general, right? So data scientists as well. I said it before, no matter what you do, data plays an important role. So therefore, the need to process data efficiently is always a given. Risk managers, algorithmic traders, portfolio managers, financial engineers, basically every role these days benefits from advanced Python for finance skills, even those roles that in the past haven't had that kind of quant twist in the sense of people sitting there and coding their own stuff, right? Let's say portfolio manager, for example, it used to be more high level and they had support staff which provided the analysis, etc. These days, I think they are much better and much more efficient when they can do many things on their own, right? Fixed income, obviously, across asset classes, not constrained, let's say, to equities or FX. Quant developers, I mentioned before, market researchers and the IT professionals in the banks, in the hedge funds, obviously are using it maybe in a different way, maybe to orchestrate the cloud infrastructure or whatnot. So it's not only about data, financial data science, data crunching in terms of financial data, it's also yeah, keep the infrastructure up and running, right? So proficiency in Python can therefore significantly enhance the prospects in the quantitative finance field. And many people also have the idea of setting up their own, I like to call it retail algorithmic trading desks, right? Even this is something where you will benefit tremendously from what we cover in the program. So just, I like to put this here always in here because many people might watch the video here later on YouTube as well. Right there, we have on our YouTube channel also a larger number of free sessions. Here, for example, the Python for Finance online bootcamp that is available, or there's also a trial version if people are interested just to sign up. And there are a number of free, or let's call them sample lessons that you can access via this free trial. So Finance with Python, let's get into it. The first class that I want to highlight, because it is, from my point of view, such an important class. It's one of the most fundamental ones, and I would say skipping that one is only at your own risk, right? And I would assume at your own disadvantage. Therefore, you should study this thoroughly and carefully, and maybe later on revisit certain concepts over and over again until you say, now I have fully grasped the ideas and they have become second nature. Overall, a typical structure for our classes would be that you have a text, but I must say that I haven't written for every class that we have, I haven't written a book. Just to pick one topic, NLP, natural language processing, we have a class, for example, but I've never written a book about NLP. But for the Finance with Python class, there is the book Financial Theory with Python, right? And there is a text available in PDF form on the Quant platform. We have the resources in terms of the recordings, the videos, right, with maybe some links and Jupyter notebooks. And you can, if you like, execute the Jupyter notebooks on the Quant platform. So you can even get started with this class without, for example, having your own Python infrastructure on your own machine, right? So this is something that works. I would say this is not always for every single class the case. So there are also classes that require you to set up your own infrastructure, to maybe work with Docker containers, to maybe do something in the cloud, etc. So, but for the introductory classes, this usually is a given that you can execute at least most of the code directly, immediately, without any additional twists or tweaks on the Quant platform. Now, I have mentioned it a couple of times, and before I get to the a part in my presentation where I cover the Quant platform on a high level, I want to show it to you now. I'm logged in here in the Quant platform, and on the dashboard, you usually see the most recent recordings, right? So reinforcement learning for finance 19, NLP basics 19. This is from the previous cohorts. Then we had an intermediate intro and overview session like the one we are currently in. You see the latest forum post, which you can also search here, right? Down there, you have an overview of the boards in the user forum, right? So this is the dashboard, right? Most people, I would say, when they cannot make, for example, a live session, they log in and then immediately see the latest session that was recorded or the second but last session, and then they started watching the stuff that they might have missed before. So you see now when I hover over this video, you see what is called the tooltip technically, and this tooltip shows you the summary of this video. So we are making use, as so many others, of the LLM technologies that are around. So we are working with the ChatGPT API. So it's not actually ChatGPT, it's about GPT 4.0, right? What we use and many others these days, since it came out, where we can transcribe the video. So we have full text search over every spoken word. By myself in the videos, there are more than 2 million words together in all the videos spoken. And here you get a summary, for example, for that video. So when you say, well, is this really something I'm looking for? Usually when you say, well, I followed 18 sessions of this class, so of course I'm going to watch the 19th session as well. But since there are hundreds of recordings on the platform, I think these summaries are pretty helpful if you want to navigate and decide actually whether you want to go deeper or not. And this holds true for all the videos. Once they are uploaded, it might take, I don't know, a couple of minutes, maybe half an hour until this is available. Of course, there is some processing going on in the back end. So, but when we speak of the class Finance with Python, right, the book was the first thing you see here on the books. The list of the books, Financial Theory with Python, would be the one. So in your personal welcome email, you have received the password for the PDFs, and here you have now the text. And for example, in the current week 1, the first week of the September cohort, you can find that you should read the first, I think, 3 chapters, as far as I recall, 2 or 3 chapters, I guess, right? And this is exactly what you find here: chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, right? And so forth, right? The same holds true for the other books as well, where you find hints usually in the study plans themselves. Of course, you can increase all of this. You want to read it larger. You can also have multiple instances open here for the Quant platform. You can have open code, you can have open a video, you can have open the user forum with a chat and a PDF. So there's obviously no limit in this regard. Maybe there is a limit with regards to your electronic real estate, meaning the size of your screen or the number of screens. So I'm working with 2 screens that are pretty large, so I usually can have open quite a few things without having them too small necessarily. So that's the book. You might recall here the book. Now the class itself. Want to have a look at the classes menu. Let me close that one. Is the next one, the classes. Right here we see in the first position already finance with Python. And immediately it shows up here, finance with Python 101, 02, 03, right? Again, here the summaries in tooltip form, right? Plus some other things. I don't know, there should be some links. I don't know where the links are not showing here. Let me reload this. There's something with the links. I don't know. There should be some text and the links. I would need to check. Let me do a hard reload. No, oh, we need to check that because in the screenshot you have seen there might also be some links here in the very brief description. So the brief description usually is not as I would say exhaustive as the summary that you see here in the tooltip. So in the past I was writing usually for every video a brief, very concise summary, but with the GPT-4 API, this is of course a little bit more easy to create a summary over the whole text in a concise and consistent manner. So let's say you want to get started in the first week, you would go here and click on the video, and it starts already here playing. So I'm going to stop this now because otherwise we might get some echo. I don't know, because this will play, of course, also audio, right? And you can jump around here as you like. You can also here, upon request in the past, you can speed up things or you can slow down things here, right? So this is both of these options are possible. What you can also do is you can here in the upper left-hand corner, you can here create notes, right? We are currently in the intro and overview session. So that's a note. I can add a timestamp. I don't have to, but I can add a timestamp. And now I've added a note here. We're currently, and this was here at the point 53 minutes and 15 seconds. So you can here put in markers, put it in comments, or maybe tasks, or what other things ever you want to have. And with the search functionality in Quant platform, you can also search for your notes, right? So this is also searchable. I think this might be pretty helpful when you say, well, I recall I've made a note in this class for this video, and I know I searched for the note because I don't really know exactly anymore where I did this, right? So that's, for example, what you can do. So this is not running again. Let me maybe close it, upper right-hand corner, right? And this works for everything else, right? And there are also here the links to the Jupyter notebooks. There might be one Jupyter notebook. That's, I would say, the standard case. One Jupyter notebook, there might be 2. Sometimes there are other resources, maybe Python scripts, sometimes other files, right? So this is different, but the standard is, I would say, at least one Jupyter Notebook per class. And I have clicked on it, and in the Jupyter Lab section of the platform, which was open already, it knows that it is already open, and it has now pulled up the Jupyter Notebook on which I was clicking on, right? You can read here, Finance with Python 01, and it has opened exactly the first Jupyter Notebook on which I have clicked before, right? So this is now a pretty short one. Once I'm here, I can also open the second one, which is a bit longer, but also you see this class is very introductory. All the code snippets are pretty short, right? And of course, you can run them. So with a shortcut, I have now restarted the Jupyter Notebook, and it's now running the whole Jupyter Notebook from start to finish, right? What I did with the shortcut, you can do here by clicking on kernel and then restart kernel and run all sets, right? So here you see this is the shortcut that I was using, right? There are many such shortcuts, and since I'm a more or less daily user of notebooks, I primarily work with shortcuts because this is a bit more efficient. You see here the charts, the figures are showing up that are created, right? So this is all executable, as I was saying, on the Quant platform. At least once again for the introductory parts, that's a given. Later on, there might be, as I was pointing out, other types of resource or other types of tasks where you're expected to do something locally, or you're expected to do something in the cloud or whatever, right? But here you can safely work on the Quant platform, right? So that's one thing. And I must, at this stage, now that I have this open, you see here there is a dot and not an X for those of you who have worked with Jupyter Lab, right? When there is a dot, this means that this whole Jupyter Notebook was not saved, right? So even when I execute this now with the same shortcut from before, the very first one, and I might change something. Let's say I do a simple change here, 4 times V, for example, right? And I want to save this now. You see this save button here is grayed out, and I cannot save it. And this has the reason that we provide you with read-only versions of all the resources, meaning that you will always have the original notebooks in a, let's say, safe manner, meaning you cannot overwrite them, you cannot delete them, but you can save them here when you go to the menu via save notebook as, right? And here you can now specify the path, right? So this is in a certain path. You have seen this before in the upper left-hand side. And I can simply remove the path where it is, right? Finance with Python 01. Here, this was one too many. Finance with Python 01 book. And I can here simply say, instead of book, for example, a copy, right? I save it as a copy. Now you see here is the X, right? This means now this has been saved. The other one that I opened before and that I executed still has this circle here, indicating that it is not saved, and everything that I would change would get lost. So I emphasize this to avoid that somebody of you who has been working maybe in such a Jupyter notebook later on loses changes or nodes or whatever you have been doing just by not knowing that this might be a read only. And I have shown you how to save it. And when I now go back to my root folder, you saw before where I changed it, but I was writing something like copy. I don't know why it didn't take the name, but here you see now the version which is open, where I have admittedly done a simple change, but nevertheless it is saved, right? So this is something that can be done that way, exactly that way that I was showing it. When I'm done and I might not need this anymore, of course, as usual, I can go and delete this version as well. So everything that I create, I can delete myself. But what we provide you with the resources, and when you have a look here at the classes, right, that is a long, long list of classes here, right, with a ton of Jupyter notebooks and other resources. This cannot be deleted, overwritten, right, changed in itself. So for example, financial packages, another class that I mentioned on the overview page, right? When I go here to the first one, the same holds true, right? This is now a version which is read only, and I can, as before, execute the financial packages. Notebook here, number one, it works with financial data, certain packages, does a lot of visualization here. This is about TA, right? Technical analysis indicators. This is related usually to trading, right? Algorithmic trading or day trading, right? Here you see drawdown charts and other charts here that are created on the fly. So just as another example from another class, this is also, as I was saying before, a fully executable, this notebook here on the Quant platform. Yeah, that much about it. I don't want to save it here. This is now the case. I discard my changes. Here the same thing, right? When I go and click on it, I say discard and it's done. But here the kernels, of course, are still running, and I might go and shut down them all. So that much about the very basics of navigating here the infrastructure in the form of the Quant platform, pqp.io. So the same holds true now for AI in finance, right? There is the book AI in Finance. You also have access to reinforcement learning for finance, currently in early version, because the final version is not yet there, right? So we are, as I was saying before, in the final stages. You will have videos, maybe some links, Jupyter notebooks that you can execute on the Quant platform, or if you prefer, for example, you can also download the Jupyter notebooks and can use them locally, right? You see, in the past, in particular, this part has grown tremendously. There are now 54 module sessions about AI in finance, right? That's the yeah, what shall I say? The fourth core. So usually I like to call asset management and algo trading and computational finance as the core classes, but I would say these days we need to consider AI also as a core class, but it's more like, if you think of it, it's more like a horizontal topic across all the other topics, and the other topics, maybe we can agree on that, are vertical ones, right? Where we go deep in one area and AI plays a role basically in all the other areas. For example, also when I was talking about the NLP class that we have added, also there AI and machine learning play a role. Therefore, the 54 modules that you see here, that are those that are dedicated only to the to this topic, but there are many more modules and sessions that make use of reinforcement learning, not that much, but of deep learning. I would say there are so many other modules where deep learning plays a role. For example, I cannot even tell you, because this is to be found all over the place, if you like. But the structure of these classes is the same: books, then the videos, other resources, Jupyter notebooks on the Quant platform or for download, and then you can go and yeah, you can execute this locally if you prefer, right? So about the Quant platform, you have seen already, I would say, some of the most important elements, which bring you, I would say, at least through week number one, right? Here you see the elements once again. We have the dashboard, you have the navigation that you've seen in action. I have explained the summaries in the form of the tooltips. We have seen the Jupyter Lab in action with code executed, the books, and also the user forum. So It's the central content and code execution as well as support platform, right? So that's a given, right? What we have added in the past before actually going to ChatGPT was search over certain elements, but with the addition of the powers and capabilities of the large language models, we were able to really improve the full text search by a lot, right? And I mentioned it before, that we transcribe all the videos, so the text is available really in text form, and this makes it possible that you can also search, if you like, to put it that way, over the spoken words and not only the words that have been typed on a keyboard by somebody. So this has improved by a lot, I would say, probably at least by one order of magnitude in terms of what search now can cover. So when we go to the platform, for example, and go back to the dashboard here, right? I can, for example, search here for SciPy, right? SciPy, a typical module, maybe not as often used or as important as NumPy and Pandas, right? But of course, scientific Python with linear algebra elements, optimization elements. I use it, for example, regularly in reinforcement learning for finance, to give you yet another current example. I mentioned that your notes are also searched. So in my notes, in my personal notes, SciPy doesn't appear. And to be honest, I haven't made that many notes. It's just for illustration, demonstration purposes. But here in the videos, right, you see already 29 search results for SciPy in the videos that are available to your subscription for the CPF program. This means to all the resources on the platform. And you see here already in the first video that is mentioned here, Mathematics Basics 29. It's in the Mathematics Basics class, not a big surprise. You can click on it and you can navigate there, or you can have a look here, right? You see the context where it is mentioned. The first time we have included into our toolset the SciPy package, which has a number of sub-packages. So this is obviously how I got started there. And 42 seconds in, or 1 minute 12 seconds in NumPy, and now we add SciPy to the mix, right? And 15 more. So when I click on it, there are 15 more. You see here exactly by the second where SciPy is mentioned in that video, including the context. So this obviously will help you deciding whether this is exactly what you are looking for, right? Or you say, well, there's enough SciPy in it, I want to revisit this particular video, right? But it's just one out of 29 videos where SciPy is mentioned, used, covered. Sometimes you see here, it's just like in 2 instances, very beginning and towards, I would say, the very end here, where SciPy is mentioned. And other classes, videos, it might be at the core, and here in many of these further down the list, it's just mentioned once, right? So the videos with the largest number of hits are listed first, and then the other ones where they are listed not as much, or not listed where SciPy is not mentioned that often. And then in the classes themselves, you see here, this now searches over the description of the single modules, right? And so forth, right? So I think the major addition that I was referring to before is really illustrated well here already with the first hit that you see, that exactly to the second where the word is spoken, you get here your search results, and you can jump to it, right? When I say 8 minutes in SciPy, now we have the function first derivative just as a benchmark. I can click on it and immediately it opens and shows SciPy, right? So it's now playing audio again. I should mute it. So this is pretty easy and efficient, I would say. I say, well, that's not maybe here, SciPy integrate. Yeah, how can I use SciPy for integration? The mathematical form example, right? And here I jump to it, immediately it starts, and you see that it is used here for integration purposes, right? So that's the search functionality that we could add recently, right? Full text search, also over spoken word. Here you see the example that I was showing more or less before, but obviously with the pandas package and not with the SciPy package. You can also search obviously for more specific stuff, right? For illustration purposes, I like to have an example where you get a lot of hits in this regard. And then you have the chatbot, again, courtesy to OpenAI and the GPT API that we use. And here's a sample of which modules focus on the usage of pandas for financial data science. So the following modules focus on as usual, they're repeated, and there's a long, long list which shows it even here, as you can see. It also searches. This is something upon request that we added recently, actually upon my request, because we have so many Jupyter notebooks that you also see here the Jupyter notebooks where some stuff is used, right? Because Jupyter notebooks are in and of themselves just text files in the form of JSON files, right? And they can be searched as well, right? So the chatbot is something that you find in the main menu, chat, right? And we can go in. So provide code that simulates geometric Brownian motion, right? So I'm pretty sure everybody who's following along has been used one of the available LLMs out there. We have added it here, A, for convenience, but as you can see here, ask me a question about Python for finance or the CPF program. So what you won't get from the standard models, Gemini, Claude, GPT, ChatGPT, etc., is information about the CPF program, right? You can do here more or less what you can do with the others, right? Ask it to write code. Hopefully you learn how to do it on your own. That's the major idea in this regard, right? But nevertheless, right, you can do it here. So explanation of the code. I mean, we are all used to what is happening here, right? But again, I could ask what videos, recordings cover the SciPy package, right? This is now related, obviously, to the CPF program. And I would think that the chatbot, if not replace, but complements the user forum to a large extent, right? So you get here now maybe not a comprehensive overview as we have seen before, but you get hints here, right? You get hints here to different different resources, such as the IPython notebook or such as a video, right, where you find something about SciPy. But and again, this is related just to the CPF program, which the OpenAIs in the world and then the Google's Geminis in the world don't have access, right? So there might be some additional hints beyond the user forum, beyond standard stuff, right, which might help you discovering or learning the topics of the program, right? Here, the example, I think it's the same thing. I even had a much shorter prompt that I use, right? Provide code that simulates the geometric Brownian motion. Here I was writing a much larger prompt, but we've seen that we get the same result with a shorter prompt as well. So that much about it. And the study plans now are as follows. We have the standard one for the cohort, to which you have access via the bit.ly short link. This is a Google Doc, which is updated usually weekly, right? When I plan the live sessions, this is done towards the end of the week for the next week. I put here a gray background to show in which week we are in. Here are the live sessions and what you should study in the first week. So Finance with Python 1 and 2, so the first two modules. Then the chapters 1, 2, 3, PFF key skills, tools and skills 01, AI and finance 01, and then you have the selection of optional topics. In the beginning, I would recommend that you really focus on the ones that are in the study plan, maybe not that much on the optional ones. But I can imagine that we have delegates that have maybe a few more obligations, be it professional ones or family ones or whatever, right? And others who might have a bit more time to study, right? So if you need to prioritize, you should focus on the core topics. So from left to right, I would say. So if you can just do one thing, do finance with Python. If you can do two, do finance with Python and PFF key skills. If you then have still time, do tools and skills. And if you still have time, AI and finance 01. And then I would say for those who are really ambitious and they still have time left, they can go to one of the optional topics. So that's the study plan. There's also the study plan here for the 12-month self-paced version. 12 months is just an example that I came up with because people have asked me. So you can do the same thing in 6 months, you can do the same thing in 9 months. It depends on how you want to do. Maybe we even have people who are so ambitious that they say, well, I want to be even faster than the 16 weeks, the 4 months, right? So you have all the flexibility. You have indefinite access to your resources. You have all the flexibility. You can attend the live sessions, even if you study in a self-paced manner. So you decide what fits best in your schedule and how much you can stomach, so to say, right? Maybe there is a limit to the number of hours that you can spend with Python for finance. I would fully relate to that, although I'm doing it obviously since many years, more or less full-time, right? But still, you have all the flexibility, and that's the major message. Here again, the link to this plan that you can also copy, download maybe, and then adjust it to your taste, to your likings, to what you want to focus on. In the example study plan, I have put asset management as the core topic first, right? But if you say, well, I'm a computational finance guy, financial engineering is what I'm interested in, then you can replace asset management by the computational finance parts. That's, of course, it's also a possibility. Overall, with regard to the program, there are a few guiding principles, right? And I have come up in the past with this overview, a chart, because people were asking a bunch of things, right? A bunch of things with regard to how many, let's say, this is an example that jumps to my mind. How many different trading strategies and algorithmic trading do you cover in detail? And then I replied in general, well, you need to respect that we are a Python first program, right? Our ambition is not to have an exhaustive set of trading strategies that we teach you in the algorithmic trading part. It's rather that we want to teach the skills, the Python skills and skills around that might be necessary. Let's say Docker containers, cloud infrastructure, etc., that put you in a position to research your own strategies, to backtest them, and then to deploy them, right? Python first. So coding and implementation rather than theory or practical considerations. By practical considerations, I mean, if you work for a buy-side institution, a hedge fund, or an asset manager, there might be considerations that play into what you are doing that we cannot even touch upon, right? Therefore, here's the implementation. We have a lot of examples. We cover a number of strategies in algorithmic trading to stick to that example. But it's not that this is the primary thing as if it would be in a master's program at the university, right? Where we say, well, let's get started with a broad overview of what types of strategy. Let's dig a little bit deeper. And then 10 weeks in, now let's consider the implementation aspects of going with the first simple strategy. No, it's implementation, Python first, and we have then a number of examples that illustrate the usage of Python. It's also pretty specific, so algorithms and examples are specific in nature. And again, it's not the academic approach where we say, well, we provide you with a comprehensive overview of basically everything that might be relevant, right? So we have specific examples. We want to make them as appealing and instructive as possible, but they are not meant to be an exhaustive overview, right? It's also not, for example, with regard to the teaching of Python itself, right? When you think in terms, let's say, of a important data structure, a list object, for example, usually we would use a list in a specific context and then touch upon certain aspects and important methods, right? But we wouldn't spend hours and hours on end with the list object and going through all the single relevant aspects. This is done here and there, right, in introductory parts, but not in every single area where we might touch upon list objects. Then reproducibility. Recently, somebody approached me and asked which kind of data sources do we need when we want to attend the CPF program. And I said, well, you don't need really a data source, let's say like a Bloomberg terminal with data access, or LSEG workspace subscription or some other subscription. We provide you in general with the CSV data files that you can use in order to reproduce all the results, right? Or we work, for example, in algo trading with demo accounts of trading platforms where you for free can retrieve the data sets, right? So this is what I mean by reproducibility, right? I'm not showing you examples and say, well, I'm so sorry, but I cannot provide you access to the data source because there are licensing issues involved, etc. So we provide you with the data. You can go and use the data. And of course, later on, again, practical considerations on your job or depending on what you want to do, right? Later on with what you have learned, then this might become an issue that you say, well, for this, I now need a data subscription, right? But in a professional context, I think this is always a given, that you have access to the data that you need in order to do your job properly. And then it is also not, I like to compare it to going to the movies, right? Having a good time watching a movie, a cinema, right? And going out and say, well, this was really interesting. And that was it, right? You could go about this like watching a number of YouTube videos, etc. You could watch a number of Python for Finance, key skills videos, but our program is supposed to be practical. You should code, right? You don't learn coding by watching videos. You learn coding by coding. It's like you learn swimming by swimming, and you learn playing the piano by playing the piano, right? This is what I mean by practical. To acquire coding and other practical skills is the main goal. Therefore, skill acquisition is indispensable. It's not about know-how. Of course, know-how always plays a role, but your fingers must be able to put your know-how into executable code. So therefore, practical, and expect to do a lot of work in terms of coding, exercises, test projects, etc. So just by doing it by yourself is, maybe not a guarantee, but it's for sure the right way of trying to master the advanced Python for Finance skills in the CPF program. Speaking of quizzes and exercises, there are very simple quizzes around, like yes and no questions about let's say, data structures here, or multiple choice questions about NumPy and other ones here, right? So this is for you to adjust. I've now studied a couple of hours about pandas or NumPy or list objects or whatever. And what I was saying before, that we typically don't have the approach of going in a Python exhaustive way, one object, and then spend hours on end on it. But once you have studied for a while, you should go back and then go through the quizzes and say, well, do I have a good understanding of the Python data structures and what they involve, right? Tuple, list, set, and dict objects, right? You find in many different contexts, examples, and also sometimes complete notebooks about, let's say, a list object, to stick to my example. But here you can then test your understanding in the form of yes/no questions, multiple choice questions, or, for example, here exercises. So the exercises here are for another topic, control structures, right? Nested for loops, while loop, if else, for loop, right? So there are also such exercises for the data structures, right? But I want to say we have data structures, we have control structures, and many more topics that we can work through here in the form of the quizzes. Yeah, speaking of providing support, the user forum, I didn't focus on it before, but you have seen the overview, and here also a couple of board entries for certain topics, right? The user forum is, of course, there to provide you support. I would always recommend, and just recently somebody was writing, this is, I don't know, 2 days ago or whatnot, said, well, I had a question, but I searched the user forum and somebody else has asked a question and it was answered, and my question therewith was answered as well, right? So you should go first there, search for it. If you don't find anything, then you can do a new post and ask your question. But, and this is important, this is very important, I haven't included it here, you should always follow the rules. So when you start a new post, there is a link to, we didn't write it on our own, but this is the link to the page from Stack Overflow, which explains how to create a minimal, reproducible, complete example that allows others, right, to help you in an efficient and targeted manner, right? You cannot imagine how many user forum posts we have had in the past where people saying, well, I went through this Jupyter notebook while you're in the middle, did X, Y, that. When I try to do it, it does not work. Can you help? And usually we would say, which Jupyter notebook? What code was it? What exactly went wrong? What was the error that was raised, etc. Right? You should be, in a position to say, well, here, have a look. These are the 7 lines of Python code. When I execute them, I face the following issue. I would expect X, Y, that, but I get A, B, C, which is not what I expect. Can you help me getting the code in a correct way so that I get what I expect, right? Or what I have seen in the video, or what others have done, or you know what I mean, I guess, right? So this is important. Otherwise, we are not in a position to really help. And once again, the user forum is for technical and content questions, right? When we now get to the Discord server, I can now say the Discord server is for everything else. So if you say, well, what is about, for example, here you see one channel for later on, right? The final project. That's a popular topic, right? What about final project? What does it involve, etc.? PP, or here program-related questions. What about the schedule, the study plan, certain session, or you might ask career topics, or whatever is beyond a technical question, so code-related or finance-related, and the CPF program itself. So when you say, well, which module covers X, Y, that, you might then recall, I go to the chatbot and I ask that first, or do the search, the full text search. And we also use the Discord server already in the first week for a live Q&A where we meet together. But of course, this can be used asynchronously as well. You can leave a question, and after a while, you can expect an answer in this regard as well. In the user forum, the same holds true. Whenever you do a post in the user forum, we, the team at TPQ, is getting notified by email. So no need to write us an email. Dear Eve, listen, I have put something in the user forum. Can you have a look? No, we get notified for every single post that is put up there, right? With regard to the final project, I provide just the link here and some screenshots with regard to the requirements. That's the requirements document, right? It is well too early for those of you just starting out to think of the final project. I always say, just think of this once you get through the 12-week formal schedule, then there's a good point in time to get started thinking about the final project. Not earlier than that, but I know because there are questions, oh, well, what is involved in getting the CPF? What do I need to target in the end, right? And therefore, I'm providing it here. So the link to the brochure, and this is just meant for you when you say, well, I want to get another summary or high-level overview. Here's the link to the brochure. Probably you have read this before, but I've just included it for your reference once again. This brings me already to the end of today's introduction and overview session. If there are any questions left or you face any issues, now you know exactly where to go to. Content related, code related, so with regard to technical questions, user forum, right? Everything else on the Discord server, and of course, if you have something personal, let's say, when you say, well, this is something I don't want to share with all the other delegates, and you have some personal topic, whatever this might be, you can of course also reach out by email. But generally, user forum and Discord server, you also have seen the bot in action, which helps you also with the CPF program, not only with general things. You have seen the full text search, you have seen the study plan. I have explained what to focus on. I have talked about the guiding principles and what to expect. And yeah, I hope this gives you all the necessary ingredients for you to have a great and efficient start into the program. As I was saying before, I'm really excited to go into yet another round with all of you together. And yeah, I just can say happy Python coding, and I'll see you in the next session. Take care. Bye-bye.